Hello, Divorce and Beyond family. I've got some exciting news because we have teamed up with Headspace to guide you toward better mental health. With Headspace's meditation, mindfulness tools, and mental health support, you're set for a journey to a happier, healthier you. And there's more because if you sign up through our exclusive link, you'll enjoy 2 weeks of Headspace membership for free. So don't miss out on this opportunity to embrace your well-being. You can check out the show notes for the link or just go to divorcebeyond.com/headspace-Susan. And you'll be able to start your path to peace and joy today. This is just one more way that we can support you on your journey to a better beyond.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
So healthcare is offensively expensive. Maybe not for a 30-year-old, but certainly as you get to 40 and on, it can be very expensive. So in gray divorce, you're 59 and you're getting divorced and you don't have a job that has benefits. That's going to be expensive. That's going to be $1,200 a month. And are you eligible? Are you healthy? Lots of different factors there.
Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce and, most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition. Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host and listeners. Today we're going to talk about the ongoing phenomena. I can't say it's something new because I'm sure you've probably heard about it if you've been dwelling in the space of divorce for any period of time, but gray divorce is not going away. In fact, according to statistics, one of the largest groups, age demographics of people getting divorced are those of 50 or older. Now, I talked with my expert who you're going to meet in a second, and I have to tell you all, I don't think 50 is that gray in this world. But in any case, apparently there are people out there in the world that consider that a senior divorce. Gray divorce, green divorce, for younger folks, whatever we're going to be talking about. In many ways, these are similar processes. But when it comes to the finances, there are definite differences, or at least things that you need to be aware of if you're getting divorced after a long-term marriage or later in life, closer to, I would say, retirement. So I've brought on an expert for you all. Her name is Jennifer Lee. I think you're going to enjoy hearing from her because she certainly has some wonderful insights and expertise to share with you. She is the founder of Modern Wealth, a Sarasota-based financial firm that specializes in helping individuals through life's transitions, one of which I suspect is divorce. But another one might very well be retirement. As I said, I knew she was going to have a lot of great insights for you all. And she helps people navigate those emotional and financial challenges of the things that are happening when we have these significant transitions in our lives, how those affect us financially. Her emphasis is building long-lasting relationships and encouraging clients to express their values through a family love letter, which I love that too. So we're going to leave that to the end, but I want to make sure she touches on it. But thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. I'm really delighted to have you here with us today.
Pleasure to be with you.
So when you and I were talking, I mentioned to you that I have not really, in 300 episodes almost, I have not done an episode on the significant challenges financially of a gray divorce. And I'm not sure why that is. Along the lines didn't come up. I've done several episodes on the financial issues of divorce. And so when we're talking about what we are going to highlight today, some of this may sound very familiar to listeners. We're going to talk about asset division. We're going to talk about alimony and spousal support, retirement funds. We talk about those in all divorces. But when it comes to a later in life divorce, 50 or older. Can we just make it 60 and older?
I think we need to, or a gray optional.
gray optional divorce. I mean, some people these days are becoming tech entrepreneurs and retiring at 30. So I don't know. It could just be for those who are at a point where retirement is closer than further away. These have significant issues that are raised financially when you're getting divorced close in time to when you might be retiring or when you might have significant changes downward in your income. Let's dive in and maybe talk about one of those that is really common in any divorce, asset division, right? Assets have got to be divided between the parties no matter what, right?
Exactly. And it depends on how long have they been married. So you're having a great divorce, but were you only married, 5 years, or were you married 35 years? So it really does matter. Are you coming from two separate families that became blended, and then you accumulated assets together and now you're separating it? It can be a little bit of a mess, but I think the biggest thing is that people don't realize, it's one thing to just split assets and go on your way, but really what you're dealing with is two separate households. So maybe you planned very, very well for retirement with your spouse, two people, one household, and you have some discretionary money for travel and for other things. If you split that household and those assets in half and now have two mortgage payments or two pool cleaners and two of everything, it may be a different type of retirement than you anticipated.
Yeah, and that's a really good point right there, because we talk often about that just paradigm of divorce, that when you take whatever pot of money a household has when you're married and living under the same roof, and you split that, whatever that pot of money is, whether it's one working partner or two working partners, but you split it into two households, pure math just says it's not going to work the same way as it did supporting one household. But when you do that later or closer to retirement, when your sources of income might be reducing or you have less opportunity to go out and earn more or increase your income, that can have a significant impact on your standard of living as you go forward.
It's true. And I'll tell you that a lot of people who will come to myself and others in that pre-planning process really just assess, what is life going to look like economically if I do this? They may decide not to, because there isn't any runway really where you have another 15 years of work and time to earn an income that you can accumulate more assets. So if the economic reality isn't so great, sometimes people will choose to stay.
Really excellent point. And I can tell you, in my practice when I was a divorce attorney or family law attorney, I worked on several what I would call post-nuptial agreements, where the parties decided to remain together, living together under the same roof so that they could continue to share expenses, but living separate lives. And these were after, 30, 40-year marriages, but their financial reality was that they couldn't live the life that they had jointly envisioned. And you mentioned that, right? They had planned for retirement, but they had planned for it under one roof. And so they chose, it'd be interesting to go back and look today, because most divorce attorneys, their clients don't stay in touch all that long after we finish working with them. That was a choice. And it's not that it happened just once or twice. That happened several times. And one thing I would say, and maybe you've seen this with your clients when you're advising them financially, when there are difficult times in the economy or things going on, like we have this exorbitant mortgage rate situation going on right now, which is making divorce hard for everyone, right? Because you can't go out and refinance or sell the house the same way that you would have in the past if you have to buy a new house. So you tend to see more of this, you know what, we're going to stick together, but in a different way type of agreement.
And that, I mean, that's kind of curious and kind of interesting. I like the idea of that. Look, people, if they're married for 30, 40 years, they've got they've got depth of relationship and depth of family, and you just may not be in love anymore. But it might also be your best friend. So if you can work that out, and nobody has any real issue with it, I guess there's not a whole lot of dating happening in the household, because that could get itchy. But that's a plausible solution from a financial perspective.
I mean, we've seen it certainly. And you mentioned another factor for these maybe older age divorces is it still matters how long your marriage was, right? So you were mentioning most of the time when people are getting divorced, 50s, 60s, 70s, we're talking significant length of time of the marriage, not golden bachelor 4 months of marriage. I don't even know, did they make it to 4 months? Right. I suspect there was not a lot of property division that went on or will go on in that divorce. That usually means if it's been a very long-term marriage, 20, 30, 40 years, that everything the parties have accrued is considered marital property, but it's still finite. It is what it is. And the fact that the parties are closer in time to retirement or later in life, the court doesn't have a way to maximize that money or do anything other than split it up, right? It's the same pile of money if you're 30 that if you're 60.
Exactly. It is that same pile of money. I think that when you're looking at any divorce, but particularly a great divorce, if you haven't been married 10 years, or you're not yet 65 and eligible for Medicare, there are other factors there too, because healthcare costs are exorbitant. I had a couple that I knew their relationship was ending, and they had been together, and they were a great divorce. They had been together eight and a half years. They still cared about each other, but they weren't in love anymore. And they remained married till they were 10. It was 10 years. So that
I heard that coming.
She would have the option, people don't think about it. They just say, I want to be divorced. Get me out. Let's be done with this. But the reality is, well, okay, you've been married twice and neither one was 10 years and your income is less. We really need to think about this financially. If you don't hate your soon to be husband, I think we need to, slow the roll. Slow the roll here and, facilitate out over time. So.
Well, and you're making a good point. Maybe explain to the listeners what that 10-year rule for Social Security is, because I'm not sure they will all know that.
Sure. So you need to be married at least 10 years in order to claim your spouse's Social Security if it's higher. Now, if your spouse makes less money than you, it's irrelevant to you. You can get out whenever you want. Of course, for them, they would then not be able to take yours if you weren't married for 10 years. So it's just a consideration. I mean, I'm always hopeful that people have some sort of respect for one another when they go through the divorce process, because they were in love at one point. Doesn't always work out that way. Lots of high conflict and lots of aggravated people, but where you can be respectful and considerate, definitely we want to think about it. So you want to make sure that if it's daggone close to 10 years, that you wait and file a couple weeks after you've been married for 10 years.
And it's the filing date, everyone. So depends on certain jurisdictions, but it's the filing date. And that's a significant point. I had couples who were at 8.5, 9 years of marriage who have, even negotiated their entire agreement, mediated, signed everything, and then just hold on to the paperwork. They live separately. They live as if they're divorced, but they stay in the legal status as married until after the 10th year passes, so that option is there. Because if you have a parent who has been a stay-at-home parent for a significant period of time, or you have someone who was self-employed and not paying into Social Security the same way, you can have significant disparities in Social Security benefits among spouses. So this can be a non-issue for some people, as you mentioned. It can be a significant issue for others.
It's definitely something that if it's less than 10 years, we want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, a good financial advisor, it's going to be one of the things that they look at for sure, especially when you are a little older, a little closer to claiming that Social Security, because other factors that come in are the age you claim Social Security at, right? You know, that the earlier you claim it, the more it reduces your benefits. And then you mentioned another extremely important factor, and that was healthcare costs.
Yes.
Which, you know, that's one thing when you're an agile, young 30-year-old getting divorced. But when you apparently are one of us old folks getting divorced, you know, health insurance is no joke. Healthcare coverage is no joke. And the cost of it, people always say, well, I'll just get COBRA. COBRA is only good for 3 years, and COBRA is exorbitantly expensive.
Let's understand COBRA. COBRA just allows you to stay on a plan without any medical underwriting. You're staying on COBRA from an employer's plan. Well, if the employer was paying 50% of your benefits, just because you're staying on, you have to pay 100%. So healthcare is offensively expensive. Maybe not for a 30-year-old, but certainly as you get to 40 and on, and if you have a family, it can be very expensive. So in gray divorce, you know, you're 59 and you're getting divorced and you don't have a job that has benefits. That's going to be expensive. That's going to be $1,200 a month, and probably not for great insurance coverage. And are you eligible? You know, are you healthy? Lots of different factors there.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, our health insurance laws are changing. And, you know, right now we have the Affordable Care Act, which does provide coverage for anyone. But as you just said, you know, we just went through this. My stepkids all just turned 26. And at 26, they're no longer eligible to be on a parent's plan. So they had to get their own policies. And I can tell you what's available at a reasonable cost is not very good coverage. And you're right, $1,200 is a minimum of what you might pay as an older person. You know, the older we get, the more they charge us, because apparently we use the insurance more. So that's a really significant factor. And then you have, you know, the whole Medicare issue, whether or not you're eligible, your age factors into that as well. But that doesn't cover everything either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
You really have to put some thought into the insurance coverage. I can tell you another thing that I saw people get creative with legally in the divorce process is some people where one of the spouses had excellent health insurance coverage, the parties would go through a legal separation instead of a divorce, because under some policies, some plans, a legally separated spouse could stay on the health insurance at that employer subsidized rate. Now that loophole is closing as employers have gotten wiser and wiser to it. But I had many cases where the parties would go through a legal separation for a period of time until somebody was ready to be able to get coverage either through a new spouse or in some other situation. But health insurance can be one of your largest expenses monthly for someone who's a little older. Hey listeners, are you navigating the tough waters of divorce and feeling overwhelmed by the process? Let me introduce you to Hello Divorce, your ultimate ally in making this journey smoother and less stressful. Hello Divorce offers a modern, affordable approach to divorce, combining expert legal advice with easy-to-use online tools. So whether you need help with paperwork, mediation, or simply some guidance, Hello Divorce has you covered. Plus, their flat fee services mean no hidden costs, just clear upfront pricing. Visit hellodivorce.com today to learn more and take the first step toward your fresh start Remember, you don't have to do this alone. Hello Divorce is here to help. If you are enjoying this episode, don't forget to check out the almost 300 episodes we have in the archive. We have all the top experts on every topic related to divorce and to thriving in your beautiful beyond. So visit the podcast website at divorceandbeyondpod.com for more.
And now we return to today's show.
Now, one of the things that people consider when they are getting divorced, and especially those later in life, is they're saying, well, I'll get alimony or I'll get spousal support. And so really nothing should change. I've heard about this thing called standard of living. What could go wrong? And there's so much that can go wrong with alimony and spousal support as it is. But later in life, there's a lot that can go wrong, right?
Well, I mean, we have, your life expectancy may shift as you get older in life. So, when you have a negotiated alimony or child support, you always want to make sure that you have some life insurance coverage that covers that big nut. Because think about it, you're divorcing, you're having this guaranteed stream of income for a period of time, however long it is. Hopefully it's till you're 65. And you need, that's a big pot of money that's coming your way, and you need to insure that. So that's having a life insurance policy, a death benefit on your ex, so that just in case, in the event that they were to pass early, before they're able to fulfill this obligation, there's a financial injection that helps you and your family continue on. That's certainly something that I always recommend. But, there's also the health of the person, whether they'll be eligible for that.
Oh, for the life insurance.
For the life insurance. And then how long, if they are healthy, you have this policy and they say, okay, until I retire, I'll pay you, some alimony. Well, what if they decide they're tired of paying alimony and they just want to retire?
Hit 65 and they retire, because that's when people retire. That is a situation you see all the time. You're awarded alimony, but alimony or spousal support, whatever your state calls it, is a percentage usually, or is based upon the income of the payor. So that's great if he or she is out there earning a lot of money, but if they retire, it suddenly becomes a percentage or a portion of a lot less money. And, and they're entitled to a downward modification or sometimes a termination, depending on the terms of your agreement. So or your judgment, right? So that's another thing that I think people don't realize, even if they were awarded, and you and I probably don't see this very often anymore, but even if you got something that they called lifetime alimony back in the old days.
Yeah.
It's not for a lifetime, folks. It was a misnomer because, again, it's only a percent. It's based upon the income of the payor for the most part. And so if they don't have it, you can't get alimony out of a stone, right? If they're not working.
Well, I would hope that, assets were divided. There were quadros, qualified domestic relations orders, that split retirement assets. If there's a pension, I would hope that the pension payments were negotiated in the divorce so that that's set when they do retire. The proportion that the spouse is entitled to is already allocated. It's not always the case that all those things are I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Of course, you have a good divorce attorney. They are. I just got off the phone with a client who's been waiting. She's been divorced maybe 10 years. Divorce took forever in New York State. It should not have taken this long, but it did. She just called me because there's a piece of her husband's deferred comp that she only gets when he retires. And she just found out what that number is 9 years later, and it's, 2.5 times what it was. So that's delightful.
Most of the time you don't get that kind of surprise, folks.
Yes, I know, but this is a juicy one. It was a very, very fun conversation. But hopefully those assets are divided, and there's a strategy and a plan for for both parties.
Yeah, well, and you make a very significant point, right? Because you're talking about retirement accounts. And as I said at the top of the episode, retirement accounts are just one more asset of the marriage, and so likely are going to be divided between you. But when you divide a 401k or an IRA at age 35, you have the potential for replenishing whatever, portion of that went to your spouse. It's going to grow, hopefully, as a product of being invested over a period of time. But when those funds get divided at a later age, closer to when you plan to use those to live on, that's going to have a significant impact as well. Even though you always planned on using them for retirement, now you're there. They're not going to get replenished. They're just going to get drawn down on, right?
It's so true. And, more and more, we talk to people all the time of varying ages. The younger folk don't want to save as much for retirement because it seems so far away. And we were talking before the show, they're about experience. And then there's this group that's really in the beginning stages of the Great Divorce, which I call crunch time. This is when you're in the crux of your career and you're 50 to 65 and you're really making the most money. This is the time to get serious and start socking that money away. But not everybody does it. And I always like to say, and they say, well, why don't people do it? I say, well, it's important, but it's not urgent. Right? There's no tax filing date. There's no definitive time where you have to put money into your retirement account or you have to allocate your assets and look at where you're going to replace income. Hopefully you do it because you have a relationship with an advisor, but not everybody thinks it's important.
No, a lot of people are just living today. And, you mentioned something earlier that I do think is something we need to highlight here is, that 65 age for retirement has been around in this country for decades and decades because it was based upon people dying in their 70s. We don't die, hopefully, but many of us don't die in our 70s anymore. People are living longer and longer. My father-in-law is just about to turn 95. We have people, thankfully, happily living longer, healthier lives due to advances in medicine and culture and all. But you have to be able to survive and have income to support yourself. We don't have the best infrastructure in this country to support our elderly and retired without their own savings. If you're trying to live just on Social Security in this country, that can be a difficult paradigm. So the other factor that I think we run into is people just don't plan that their life post working is going to be as long and wonderful as it is.
You're exactly right. Do you know those old measuring, it was like instead of a measuring tape, it was a measuring stick and it would fold up.
Yes.
And you could unfold it, right?
My grandmother had one.
Right. So I would take one of these sometimes. I do a talk and I would take one of these and unfold it. And I say, well, okay, let's fold in the first 3. And now you were at 18 inches. But now you're 18. You're not making any money. Right. The next, 6 years, you're messing around in college and after college and spending money on concerts and doing things. You're not saving any money. And so at the end, you're retiring early and I'm pulling that in. So you end up with this small window. Well, if your window is from 25 to 65, that's 40 years, you better get started because you're going to live to 90. You're going to have 30 years on the other end. You have to really save money in order to do retirement gracefully.
Oh, I like that term, do retirement gracefully. Earlier, you said something about having your costs of your pool cleaner. And I'm like, yes, I like your idea of retirement. I want to have a pool and a pool cleaning expense in my retirement. That would be important. That would be graceful.
I live in Florida, so
lucky you.
A pool.
I think that those are all things, right, that people, even if they've planned for divorce as a couple, if they've planned for retirement as a couple, they may not have actually, if they haven't worked with a good financial planner, even planned it out with sufficient monies for it to be a graceful slide into your 90s, if that's where you're going to go. So there are so many factors that make it that much more complicated to get divorced over 50, over 60, whatever age you're talking about. When people say you get divorced, it's all the same. It's really not. You almost cut your nose off to spite your face to not get financial advice in your divorce if you're getting divorced at 50, at 60, or beyond. If you're going through a divorce at those ages, as much as people try to cut corners when they're getting divorced, I think it's almost a requirement that you're going to have a good financial advisor at that time, because you don't have any margin for error. And you really need to plan. You were talking about 401ks and quadros and all those lovely vehicles that we have to divide retirement. But not all retirement plans are the same. There's different kinds of IRAs. Some of them are pre-tax, some of them are post-tax. I mean, there's all kinds of really tricky little things that seem so far away when you're getting divorced in your youth. But when you're getting divorced a little bit older in life, these are all factors that can be significant and have a significant impact on how you will actually live in the next couple of years. So, I know you're working with people who are at times of transition. I would imagine that later in life clients or clients who are closer to retirement are a part of your client pool.
Sure. I mean, we have a variety of clients, of varying ages and all over the country. But primarily our focus, our real niche is women in financial transition. I just find that people going through big emotional changes where it smashes right into finance, that's really our sweet spot where we can hopefully be a sounding board, give perspective, hold you accountable to staying on track, hold your hand when you want to quit early, and just hand in the towel. I'm a big advocate for getting all that you're due. So we want to get everything that you're entitled to and make sure that your next step, your new future is going to work for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really critical and crucial to have somebody, and you mentioned the most important part there, right, is you're feeling very emotional. And frankly, fear is a big part of the divorce process for people. Fear around money is a huge part of the divorce process. And fear around money, if you're older, is a gigantic part of the divorce process, unfortunately. So having a guide and someone to help you is really critical and important. Before we go, I don't want to forget about the love letter concept that we were talking about at the very top. So if you could share that with my listeners.
Sure. I've been in the industry for quite a long time, 28 years. I absolutely love what I do. I work with a population who's not that interested in talking about money, right? So I have to figure out a way to engage them in really, why do we have money? Why do we accumulate money? Why do we do these things? Well, we do it for our family. We do it for our legacy. We do it because we want to contribute. So I look at writing your family love letter as a way to communicate to your family all the things that are important to you. And to your contribution. And in fact, I wrote a book called Squeeze the Juice, and the beginning of the book is my father communicating his love letter to our family. And the end is me walking you through my love letter and what all those things mean. So your love letter would include things like who you want to speak at your funeral, what your values are, what your expectations of your children are. One of the things my father said was, I expect that when you go out to dinner with your mother, she never uses her Visa. So, that's a big thing. We're always trying to make sure we pay the bill. Talking about who was in your life, and who were the teachers, and what did you learn from them? What are your expectations of your children when you're not there? How you communicate with one another? Of course, where are your assets? Who are the people you trust? Do you have legal documents? Do you have life insurance? What are these things, and what are your expectations of those? So writing your family love letter is a wonderful way to not only tell people who you care about how you feel about them, but also to make sure that they're protected in the future and the things that you did to set up to make sure that they're taken care of.
I love that idea. And you mentioned your book, Squeeze the Juice, Live with Purpose, Then Leave a Legacy. I'm going to put a link to the book in the show notes so that people can find that, because I love that idea of writing your family a love letter. I can tell you, in my legal career, I've run into many situations where families have really struggled when someone has passed because there was not a legacy left, or there were not instructions left, or things weren't clear for the family. And it's a gift. I mean, it's really a gift when you can be clear with your family and share with them. So I truly love the love letter idea. So please share with everyone how they can get in touch with you, what the best way for them to find more information about you and working with you.
Sure. So I have a website called Squeeze the Juice Book, which will show you the link for all of that information, as well as mine. But what I like to do on podcasts is offer a Squeeze the Juice call, a complimentary, just 15 minutes. Maybe we left you with a question specific to your situation that you didn't get answered, and I'm happy to have that call. So my Calendly is Jennifer Modern Wealth, and be happy to have a call with you and get your burning question answered. And I just want to follow up, Susan, and say that your love letter does not replace your legal documents, right? That's not a legal document. That does not replace your will, your advance healthcare directives, all those things. I'm not an attorney. These are just
no.
This is
very good point.
This is the intro to the legal documents.
Well, the intro to it, and you can be a lot more intimate and informative to your family. Something like, I don't want your mom to have to use her. I love that he specified it was Visa. She can use the American Express, but not the Visa.
Not the Visa.
But that type of information, it's honestly, it's gold to your family when you're not there with them anymore. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate your sharing your insights and your wisdom with my listeners. This is really one of those areas for people that prepared is informed, is prepared, and really is critical to understand the nuance here. If you are, again, I'm putting it in air quotes, everyone, later in life when you get divorced. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Susan.
Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.